Hello everybody and welcome back to another set of road trip stories. When we last left off, we finally made it to Texas. Now, this was easily the biggest state that we've been in so far. It generally took us about 1 to 2 days to get through a state, but oh my goodness, I mean by the time we get through Texas, it had been like a week and a half or so. It's a huge ass state and I didn't realize how big it was until I was there. Either way, the first place we were going to stop and see was San Antonio, Texas, and this place was really cool. So we stopped off in San Antonio with the intent to go to the Alamo. We parked the van at this little grocery store called HEB, which if you're familiar with Texas, you know what that is. I'd never seen one of these before. But either way, we stopped there and we're walking through the city when we realized that they have electric bikes all over the place. $15 gets you a day pass, so you can use these electric bikes all day. We thought that was a pretty good deal, so we just started riding around. Now, as we're riding around, we're taking photos of everything that looked awesome. We would see churches and we'd stop off and we'd take a video of them. We'd see these little parks, people just sitting around, and we'd go in there and take videos. There was a point where we found this fence that had a bunch of locks on it. And I'm sitting there taking a video of these locks when this guy waves me over. Now, I didn't know who this guy was. I didn't know what he wanted, but I rode my bike over there and was like, hey man, what's going on? He says, well, here's the situation. The dude tells me that he'd been in San Antonio with his girlfriend, who was pregnant at the time. He said that he got into a fight and he was going to go on the Riverwalk with his girlfriend. Now, I'd never heard of the Riverwalk before. I didn't know what this was. But apparently they have this little park in the middle of San Antonio, and it's this man-made river, and on the sides of it you've got hotels, you've got restaurants and just spots to kind of sit and watch people go down. And then the Riverwalk tour is this little ride that costs about $30, where you sit in a boat and this tour guide tells you about the Riverwalk and some history of San Antonio. And I thought that was neat. I was like, dude, I would really like to do that. He said, well, here's my deal. He shows me his hand, and his hand is swollen and busted open. And he says, yeah, so I got into a bit of an accident. So what I want to do is I want to sell my tickets, which he had right here. He said, I want to sell my tickets, and I would like to take my girlfriend to lunch, and then her and I are going to go back to our hotel. I'm going to drive us out of here. The only problem is I don't have any money right now because I spent them on this tour. And now that my hand's all busted, I just don't want to go on the tour anymore. Now, I've seen scams before, right? And this did feel a little fishy to me, but the guy seemed legit. And that was what was weird about it. Like, he had the busted up hand. I look over at his girlfriend. She's pregnant. They're both telling me, like, look, we're not trying to dick you over here. We need to get ourselves sorted. And if you can pay $20, you know, we're not asking the whole $30 for this. If you can just pay us $20, we'll give you these tickets. We just need to get out of here. So I walk over to Trevin and I was like, hey man, here's the situation. And he goes, I don't know, that sounds like a scam. And I was like, well, I mean, it very well could be, but we're on the ride, you know, we're on the adventure. What do you think? He's like, well, I'm not going to pay it. I was like, all right, well, let's just go to an ATM. I'll go pick up $20. So we go to an ATM, I pick up the 20 and I ride back over and I give it to the guy and he gives me the tickets. They're the Go Rio San Antonio River Cruise. And we figured after we go see the Alamo, we'll go back to the boat tour. The guy said, don't actually do that. Don't go to the boat tour during the day. If you go at night, you're going to have all the lights in the trees that overhang across the river. They're going to turn on and you're going to get to see all that. And that would be a lot cooler for you guys. You can only go once, so it'd be worth it to do that. Now I'm looking over the tickets and they're like these strip tickets, you know, you pull off the tab and they still had the tab on there. I was looking them over like, are these scams or anything? And they look legit. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to take your word for it. I'm already on the ride. Let's do it. Now again, since Trevin and I were in San Antonio, we wanted to go see the Alamo. So we start riding our bikes over there and we realize that at about 4:20, they have a free show or like a free walk-in thing. So you don't even have to pay. You just get to go in. At this point, it's around 1 o'clock. So we were just kind of around the area and they had a lot of cool stuff to look at. There were like Ripley's, believe it or not, exhibits and like museums you could walk through. Really, it was just a bunch of little stuff like that. Just this kind of stuff like in this little, it seemed like the tourist part of town, which makes sense. I mean, you're right next to the Alamo. So 4:20 rolls around and Trevin and I go into the Alamo. And as we're walking into it, I was getting my camera prepared because I was like, okay, you know, I want to see the inside of this place. I want to document it and get all the footage and stuff, right? But as soon as I walk in, this staff member from across the room screams at me, "Hey, no cameras in here, turn that off." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I flick it off and I just walk around this little room. Now, I'm going to go into that in a second, but I want to tell you about this room. That's it. That's basically all it is. You walk in and it's this big brick clay room, and then they have like one or two artifacts in some other rooms, and you're not really allowed to go into those other rooms either. They're red roped off. So you can look, but you can't even go in there. So I exit the building and I'm sitting there like, okay, why in the world am I not allowed to take photos in there? You know, I was curious. I wasn't upset. I was curious. So I start doing some research, and the reason that they said that I'm not allowed to take photos in there is because the light from the camera can damage the building. Now I'm sitting there like, okay, what the hell? That is some bullshit if I've ever heard bullshit, okay? And again, don't get me wrong. I'm not the kind of person who's going to be disrespectful. I turned my camera off and I put it down, okay? I didn't go up to the staff member and argue with him or anything, but that was stupid. And here's why, okay? Because I know there are going to be people who say, well, Barry, you know, who knows if some light in there is going to cause damage to the artifacts or to the walls or something like that. Let's go into this real quick, okay? Because I looked into the physics. Because I was like, okay, maybe there is something to this. And it's not. It's all BS. So if you're using non-flash photography and you're recording or you're taking photos with non-flash photography, a camera, the only thing it does is absorb light. It's not emitting light onto anything. So there would be no problem by taking a video or doing non-flash photography. There'd be no issue whatsoever. Now, LEDs don't emit the kind of radiation that would be required to dissolve a building or even damage an artifact. Now, if I walked up to an artifact with a lighter and started burning it, then yeah, there you go. That would do it. I mean, even so far as if I had one of those old vintage cameras, you know, the ones where you put the rag over your head and you have flash powder. Okay, maybe over time, enough of those would probably damage the building or like get on the artifacts and hurt them, okay? Who's toting one around? That's so stupid. The light from your phone and the light from a camera, it has no way to actually damage the integrity of a building. That's just silly. And here's even the funniest thing on this. So you walk in and they're sitting there worried about LEDs damaging the surface of the walls, okay? And they have bulbs up in the lights emitting light all over the room. So if you're worried about light at all, bulbs emit about the same amount of radiation as an LED will. So this is just so stupid. I was like, if you're gonna make a dumb rule up and you're gonna tell me, no, just cause, you know, no, you're not allowed, how can you blame me for being like, that's stupid, you know? Like, how can you blame me for wondering why? All I wanted to know is why. That's it. I was just curious. I wasn't gonna try to disobey. I wasn't just like, you know, being a rebellious kid. I was curious. And when I heard that, I was like, seriously? Come on. See, and then beyond that, I think one of the dumbest things too is this building for 13 days was being shot at with bullets. And you're afraid that 185 years later, light is gonna tear it down? Like, Jesus Christ. It was just too much. Now, there was one rule that was still kind of BS, but at least I can respect it because it's aware that it's BS, you know? Like, you're being respectful. What they said was, here in Texas, we view the Alamo as a shrine, a place of reverence and reflectance. So you come in here to not mourn the deaths, but kind of reflect on the tragedy that happened here. And reflect on the valiant effort of the soldiers who gave up their life so that they could be free. That's what you're supposed to do in this shrine. Now, that to me is beautiful. That to me makes perfect sense. Still, I mean, okay, you're going to restrict me from not taking photos in this place that I may want to remember, but I do understand that to a degree. That's totally fine because you're not masking it with physics that doesn't work, you know? You're actually saying, hey, we have a lot of respect and appreciation for this place, and we would really appreciate it if you didn't come in here and take photos because this place is very meaningful to us. We'd rather you have an experience where you walk in and just reflect on what happened here. Beautiful. I'm down with that. Either way, I'm going into it way too much because it did kind of irk me a little bit. I was like, really? What in the world is the point of all this? But either way, we go into this building. It takes us about 3 minutes to look at everything because it's basically a room, and then there are like 2 other rooms that have some artifacts in there, and we lingered. Like, you can walk in and walk out in less than 30 seconds, and you'd totally be able to see everything. So we were just sitting in there like, that is a wall. Damn. And I have a lot of respect, I do, for what happened there. I watched the Ballad of the Alamo movie. It's a very long, slow burn. It can be hard to watch. And I also listen to Marty Robbins, and I love his song, Ballad of the Alamo. I think it's one of his best songs. I think it's amazing what those people did there, you know? 185 people holding back 5,000 men for 13 days. That's insane, you know? Especially for how small this building was. That's just insane. I just have a bit of a problem turning my brain off when someone tells me something a little dumb, right? So it's maybe around 4:30 at this point. We got in there at 4:20. We walked around the area for a little bit, and it's around 4:30, and we're sitting there like, okay, so let's go back to the van and pick up some more batteries for our cameras so that we're fully charged by the time we get to this waterway. On our way back to the van, we're riding our bikes, and we see this street performer, and he's waving people in. He's like, come on, guys, get over here. Hey, you two on the bikes, you. He's pointing at us. Get over here. And so we're sitting there like, okay, what's going on over here? So we pull up, and there was kind of a really small crowd at the beginning of this. As time went on, it took him about maybe an hour to get people to flood around him. And he was a street performer, and he actually did have an act. He called himself, he said that he was a breakdancer / comedian. And his comedy routine wasn't really funny enough to hook you. It was mostly just, hey, be aware of the fact that I'm out here and I'm calling you specifically over to me. And that was supposed to be the comedy of the thing. He's like, you over there with the mask on, what are you wearing a mask for? You're outside. Ha ha ha. Come over here. For every 30 minutes that he sat there just talking to the crowd about kind of menial stuff, he would do maybe 30 seconds of breakdancing. And I did stay because I wanted to see more dancing, and he kept promising it. He's like, yeah, I'm going to do more dancing, but I need a bigger crowd. So then the crowd would pull more people in, and then he'd talk for 30 minutes, and then he'd do like 30 seconds of breakdancing, and then he would talk again for another 30 minutes. He'd be like, no, don't go anywhere, I'm going to do more. It was cool. Like, we stayed the entire time until he was done. Either way, at this point, it's around 6 o'clock, and so Trevin and I head back to the van, we pick up our new batteries, and we head towards the waterway. Now, this Riverwalk is super cool. We actually, during the day, were walking up and down it because it's probably one of the coolest things that I had seen while I was in San Antonio. And again, I didn't know it existed. I mean, we went there to see the Alamo, and then you have this, and that was neat. So we stand in line. There's a huge line of people waiting to get on the boats, and it seems to not matter when you buy your tickets, so long as you use them on the same day. So we finally get up to the front of the line. I pass the guy the tickets, and he scans them, and he goes, when did you guys buy these? And we're like, well, we got them today. He goes, did you use them? And I was like, oh, man. And I look at Trevin, and I was like, dude, we got scammed. And the guy goes, where'd you buy these? And we're like, on the street. Some guy told us he didn't use them. And I guess, yeah, he probably did, and he totally scammed us. The guy goes, I don't care, get on the boat. That was awesome. He just let us on. That was so cool of him. So we jump on the boat. I actually wormed my way up to the front, and Trevin sat next to me, and the boat tour takes off. Now, this was a lot cooler than I thought it was going to be. I thought we were just going to float down the river, and the tour guide was going to be funny, but he was actually very informative. He told us stuff about San Antonio that I didn't know. For example, this building here was built in 1 year. Apparently, the people who were making this hotel were contracted to do it in 1 year. So the guy who built it, the way he did it was he built it layer by layer. So he built this long brick with a bunch of rooms in it, and then once it was all done, he just stacked the building up on top of itself like Legos, and then secured it into place, and that's how the building still stands today. It's one of the more famous hotels on the Riverwalk. He was telling us about actors that show up to the Riverwalk and hang out. There was actually a bench on the Riverwalk where Johnny Cash had taken his wife. And Johnny Cash etched into the bench, Johnny loves, oh shoot, I don't remember his wife's name. Apparently it's a huge site for weddings too, like people go there all the time to get hitched. What I was really interested in was when he started talking about how this Riverwalk came into existence at all. Apparently during the Alamo, Spanish settlers had designed this Riverwalk, and it was initially just a way to get water, a waterway for their settlers. And that was it. So that the missionaries had water whenever they needed it. As time went on, they built San Antonio around this thing, and every so often, this Riverwalk would flood, and it would cost millions of dollars of damages to the city, and then it killed like over 50 people just from it flooding. So this guy named Robert H. Human proposed this plan for the Riverwalk. He wanted to design it in such a way that it is today, where there are restaurants and hotels on the side of the river. You have a crosswalk on both sides so you can walk down it and make it a giant park. He wanted to model it after Venice. And after he dammed up all of the running riverways so that water can't flood in anymore, they fill it and drain it as often as they want to so that they can clean it out. And apparently they find like chairs and like rings and cell phones and stuff in there all the time. The lowest point in the river is 2 feet deep, and the deepest part is around 42 feet deep. So you could technically drown in this thing if you were just a sucky swimmer, but there's no way, because I mean, it's only maybe what, 10 to 12 feet across, and you've got like an opening on both sides. There'd be no way for you to not get out of there. This is all stuff that I never would have known about had I not been scammed earlier that day. The guy with the busted up hand gives me these tickets, so he sold them to me, and I wouldn't have gone on the Riverwalk. I wouldn't have learned all of this information. And I'm so glad that I fell for this, and so glad that the boat tour guy was just like, I don't care, go on. You know, that was super neat. Because without this, I wouldn't have seen it. And I couldn't believe how many people on our boat seemed bored. There was a group of teenagers behind where Trevin was sitting the entire time playing Pokemon Go. I'm sitting there like, hang on a minute. So you paid $30, $30 to get on this boat so that you could sit down and catch Pokemon on your way. You know, you can walk up and down this thing for free, right? What the hell? Like, enjoy this. After the Riverwalk was over, it was time for Trevor and I to take off out of the city and find ourselves a place to stay. So we went to this little park that we thought was a camping area. It said on the map that it was a camping area, but it wasn't. It was a locked down park in this suburban area, so there was just no way we were going to stay there. So we were heading towards a Cracker Barrel when we realized off the highway there was this picnic area, and that was a little more private. So we stop in at the picnic area, and we just made chili on the asphalt right there, which was, I mean, probably illegal as hell, but who gives a crap? I mean, no one was there. The next day, we drove to our next city, Austin, Texas. So our idea was to hit all the major cities in Texas. So on the way to Florida, we would hit San Antonio, Austin, and Houston, and then head on to Florida, and then on the way back, we'd hit Dallas. So we were now in Austin. And Austin, don't get me wrong, it didn't have as much to see as San Antonio did, but it was gorgeous. The skyscrapers were certainly something to behold. It was incredible. The architecture really bewildered me. So when we get into Austin, Texas, we were like, okay, so what do we see here? Because I don't want to do one of those things where we accidentally miss like a Riverwalk again. I mean, that was neat. So we start looking up tourist attractions. And the major tourist attraction was the Capitol. So we get on some more electric bikes, we pay the $15 toll so that we can ride them all day, and we head on over to the capital of San Antonio. Now, I was impressed with it. Again, the architecture was beautiful. They had statues all over the place, a big old park, squirrels everywhere. It was gorgeous. You know, you got cannons and stuff. It was cool to see, but I don't know, like it didn't really catch me like the Alamo and the Riverwalk did. I think those kind of ruined me a little bit because I'm sitting there looking at this building and I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's cool. I think it would be cooler if I could go inside and poke around, but really all you're allowed to do is just walk around the building. So we just walked around for a little bit, took some photos, and then we headed off back into town. We were riding around taking pictures of everything. I found this statue of Willie Nelson. They got really cool structure everywhere. But we find this guy who's playing drums. and there's a bit of a crowd around him. So we ride up, and I park the bike, and I jump off of it, and I have my camera with me, so I was sitting there watching, and I noticed that there are people all around pulling out their phones and taking photos and videos of this guy. So I figured, all right. So I pick up my camera, and I go to like really focus in on this guy, and he stops drumming, and he looks at me, and he says, hey, no, if you want footage, you have to pay me. So I put the camera down, and I was like, okay. And I'm looking around, I'm like, it didn't seem like anyone else paid for their photos, and they're taking them on phones. Is it just because I have like this nice camera with me? That's some BS. You know, what the hell? So either way, he's playing his music for a little bit, and I'm just sitting there enjoying it, but I'm like, no, I do want footage of this. This is cool. So I reach into my wallet, and I realize all I have is just some change, and I figure that's probably good enough. So I pull out every single bit of change I have in there, and I know it's probably not a lot. I didn't even count it, but I walk up, and I throw it in his bucket. I put my wallet back in my pants, and I step back, and I go to take the film. He stops playing again, and he goes, you, come here. In front of this crowd, and I'm sitting there like, what? Okay, fine, you know, and I walk up to him, and he goes, you know what you just did? You, in front of this crowd, you gave me silver. You think I'm just some regular average street performer? You disrespected me in front of everyone who's watching. Now, what? You like, look at me. I'm not playing on buckets. These are drums, okay? You don't give me silver. And I'm sitting there like, dude, that was all the money I have, you know? I mean, I could go to an ATM, but like, he's like, look, you don't do that. This is my art. This is my business. This is my profession, okay? You don't do that because it's disrespectful. But you know what I'm going to do for you? Go on back there. You can take photos, but here's what I want you to do. If you take photos, you have to send them to me. And if you share them with others, you got to shout me out, okay? This is a business, and I'm sure you understand that. This is about getting your name out there. So if you're going to throw me out there, you got to throw me out there. That kind of irritated me a little bit because I'm sitting there like, look, if you're on the street performing because you're passionate about what you're doing, you know, like it's fine if you want to make a little money on the side while you're doing it. But like if you go out there to perform, where's your stage? Like, how do you have the audacity to tell someone what to do with their money when you're out in public performing? It's on your own fruition, your own choice too, you know? Like, that was just kind of, I was like, what in the hell, you know? But either way, I did take videos of this guy. He was good. I'm not gonna dick around. He was good, you know? I didn't dislike what he did. I just didn't like his approach. But since he was nice enough to let me record him, I do have to give him a shout out. So, shout out to DJ Favor Carey. What a good guy, right? Now, I will tell you why I'm so hard on that guy in a little bit, but after we got our footage of this guy and we take off, Trevor and I started riding around the city and it started to become sunset. So this was going to be the perfect time to get some beautiful city shots. So we took our bikes and we rode them up parking garages as tall as we could get up to, and we started taking footage of the city. And it was awesome up here. Seriously, these buildings, the architecture really had me, you know? Like there was just something so beautiful about them. And the way the sun would glow off them in sunset, oh my God, I just love this place. We were on the top of this really tall parking structure, and generally I don't have a problem with heights, but this, this was actually really scary to look down.
Look at that fall. Woo, that'd be fun. Oh, God.
Do you have a coin or something to throw down there?
I gave all my coins to that guy and he got mad at me for it.
That's right.
All right, so for anyone who's curious, I have a crinkled up piece of paper. We're gonna drop it down there.
Smack.
It just smacked? Jesus.
My balls are in my throat.
So we ride down the parking structure and we're heading back towards the HEB that we parked at, and we see this girl playing a violin on the side of the road. So we stopped off to listen to her. She's like, hey guys, how's it going? We're like, hey, we just stopped in for the music. She's like, what do you want me to play? I was like, how about you play us whatever you love the most? And she goes, okay. And she starts playing this Celtic stuff, and she was so good at it. I was like, oh man, I really want to give you something for playing, you know, like you are really good. But this guy, he made me give him all the money that I had if I wanted to record him, and I only had change. But my God, I would have loved to have given it to you, you know? And she goes, no, don't even worry about it. Look, I'm not doing this because of money. I'm not doing this because I want to make money on the street. I'm doing it because I'm practicing at home anyway, and I need to get over my stage fright. So if I come out here and practice, then it kind of alleviates that stress and then makes it easier. We're sitting there like, that is so awesome, man. Like, oh my God, I seriously wish I had like saved it so I could give it to you. And she said, seriously, don't even worry about it. Again, I'm not doing this for money. I'm passionate about this. And that right there is the difference. I got to meet someone earlier in the day who maybe he was passionate about what he was doing. It seemed so. It seemed he was. But his focus was money. His focus was his business. And I meet this girl who plays violin on the side of the road. And her focus was so anti-money. Her focus was, I love what I'm doing and I want to share it with the people around me. I have so much more respect for her than I did that other DJ Kelly, you know? Like, so much more. Either way, Trevin and I get back to the van, we park the bikes, and we start heading out of the area. It didn't take us too long, maybe an hour or so, to find ourselves a campsite, and we actually stayed there for a couple days. This campsite was really cool, and we actually had a pretty interesting experience here, but I'm gonna have to get to that next time. I know I said this already, but Texas is huge! Generally at this time, we would have probably been through a couple states by now, but we weren't even halfway through Texas. Houston is almost right in the middle, and we were not even close. But it was nice to stop off because I was starting to feel a little sick, and we could take a couple days to recoup and finally have ourselves a nice little campsite to be at for a little bit. Either way, like I said, we're going to stop right there. Thank you guys so much as always, and I'll see you in the next road trip.